In a quiet village on the edge of an ancient forest, there lived a hunter named Juma. Juma was brave, skilled, and admired by everyone in the village for his strength and ability to provide for his people. He carried a handcrafted bow, worn from years of use, and arrows he carved himself. Juma was proud of his skills, and his confidence grew with each hunt, filling him with a sense of purpose. Yet, while the villagers looked up to him, the elders often reminded Juma of the spirits in the forest, urging him to treat the land and its creatures with respect. One morning, with the sun barely a golden glow on the horizon, Juma awoke with a restless urge to hunt. He decided to venture deeper into the forest, to a place no one from the village dared go. The forest was dense, its air thick with mystery and the distant calls of birds. Sunlight filtered through the treetops, casting long shadows across the ground. Juma moved carefully, stepping over roots and branches, his eyes sharp, his movements silent. As he ventured deeper, he stumbled upon a hidden clearing. Here, the forest seemed alive in a way he hadn't seen before. Colors were more vibrant, and a strange, glowing mist hung in the air. In the center of the clearing stood an animal like none he had ever seen. A beautiful antelope with a coat that shimmered like polished bronze and horns that curved elegantly as though crafted by an artisan. Its eyes were a deep, radiant green, looking straight at Juma, calm yet piercing. Juma's heart raced, for this was no ordinary antelope. Something deep inside him sensed its importance, but his hunter's instinct quickly overshadowed his doubts. He imagined the celebration in the village, the feast, the admiration. With a practiced motion, he pulled an arrow from his quiver, knocked it on his bow, and took aim. The arrow flew, swift and true, and with a soft, graceful fall, the antelope sank to the ground. Its eyes dimmed, and the shimmering glow faded from its fur. Feeling victorious, Juma lifted the antelope onto his shoulders and began his journey back. As he left the clearing, however, the light seemed to dim, and the once vibrant colors of the forest faded. A sudden chill ran through the air, and an eerie silence settled over the trees. Juma, too proud to admit fear, ignored the sensation and pushed forward. As he approached the village, he noticed something strange. The villagers, who usually greeted him with smiles and cheer, now watched him in silence, their faces etched with confusion and unease. The once lush crops in the fields lay wilted, and the sky darkened, casting an unnatural shadow over the village. The children, usually full of laughter and games, looked pale and unwell, clinging to their mothers in fear. Juma's heart sank, realizing that something terrible was unfolding. He was too proud to show his fear, but he knew he had made a grave mistake. As worry and confusion spread, the villagers gathered around Elder Zawadi, the wisest man in the village, revered for his knowledge of ancient stories and the spirit world. Elder Zawadi approached Juma with a grave expression, examining the lifeless antelope Juma had brought back. "This is no ordinary creature," Zawadi said, his voice a deep, steady whisper that sent chills down Juma's spine. "This antelope belongs to the spirit of the forest. By taking its life, you have unleashed a terrible curse upon us all." Juma felt his heart drop, the weight of his actions pressing down on him. He had been too eager, too careless. Now his people, his friends, and his family were suffering. Seeing the anguish in his neighbors' faces, he knew he had to make things right. Elder Zawadi told Juma that the only way to lift the curse was to venture into the spirit world and seek forgiveness from the spirit of the forest itself. It would be a dangerous journey, a journey few dared to make, but Juma didn't hesitate. If facing the spirit would save his village, he was willing to do it. The next morning, before dawn, Elder Zawadi prepared Juma for the journey. He wrapped protective charms around Juma's neck, drew sacred symbols on his arms with ash, and chanted ancient prayers to guide him. The villagers watched in silence, their hope resting on Juma's courage. With one final nod from Zawadi, Juma set off, crossing the boundary between the familiar forest and the unknown realm of the spirits. As Juma stepped into the spirit world, the forest around him transformed. Shadows stretched and twisted into strange shapes, and the air filled with a mist that seemed to pulse with life. Trees towered over him, their trunks twisted and faces forming in the bark, whispering words he couldn't understand. Glowing orbs floated around him like fireflies, lighting a path through the darkness. His journey was filled with trials. The spirit world tested him, playing on his deepest fears and his deepest regrets. At times, he heard the cries of the villagers, faint and distant, calling for help. But he pressed on, each step taken with determination and humility. He encountered spirits who challenged him to solve riddles, enchanted rivers that flowed in impossible directions, and creatures with eyes that glowed in the dark. After days of wandering, he finally reached a vast, sacred grove bathed in silver moonlight. In the center stood a towering tree, its branches stretching like arms to the sky, its roots winding deep into the earth. There, emerging from the shadows, was the spirit of the forest. The spirit was neither human nor animal. It was a being of pure energy, cloaked in robes that seemed woven from the forest itself, blending seamlessly into the leaves and branches. Its face was obscured, but its eyes glowed a fierce, brilliant white, radiating a mix of beauty and terrifying power. Juma, overwhelmed, fell to his knees. "Great Spirit," he began, his voice trembling, "I come to ask for forgiveness. I acted in pride and ignorance, and now my village suffers. Please, lift the curse from my people. I am ready to do whatever it takes to make amends." The spirit looked down on him, its eyes piercing through his soul. For a long moment it said nothing, and Juma felt every ounce of his guilt weighing on him. He felt the suffering of his people, as though it were his own, the withered crops, the crying children, the fading laughter. Then at last, the spirit spoke, its voice like the rustling of leaves and the murmur of rivers. "Juma, your heart is weighed down with the suffering of your people, and that is why you were chosen to bear this burden. The land and all its creatures are bound together. To harm one is to harm all. Remember this, and never forget it." With a gentle motion of its hand, the spirit lifted the curse, a warm, golden light radiating through the forest. Juma felt the warmth spread through him, filling him with peace. As he bowed in gratitude, the spirit world began to dissolve, and he found himself at the edge of his village once again. When he returned, he saw life renewed. The crops stood tall, green and lush, children played with bright laughter, and the villagers welcomed him with open arms. Elder Zawadi embraced him, pride shining in his wise old eyes. Juma had returned not just as a hunter, but as a guardian of the land, one who understood the balance that binds all life together. He shared his story, teaching others the lesson he had learned in the spirit world. And from that day forward, Juma and his people lived in harmony with the forest, respecting its mysteries and protecting its creatures. And so the story of Juma, the hunter who ventured into the spirit world to save his people, became a legend passed down through generations, a reminder that every life, no matter how small, is part of a sacred balance deserving of respect.